Thank you. I'm back again. And got my hands on a little home-built airplane right here that somebody put together and did beautiful woodwork on it. And I'm going to talk about two of the favorite airplanes that I used to fly. First one was started off back in the 30s and ended up being one of the mainstays in resupplying the bases in China out of India. And we used to fly the hump. And C-46, which I'm talking about, was a workhorse. It had R-2800 engines on a 2,800 cubic inch displacement on these big radial engines. And it had a two-stage supercharger available so it could fly high over the Himalayan mountains. Early versions of this had the Curtiss electric propellers on it. This airplane was used to start an airline in America by the Flying Tigers. They had been resupplied by these birds in China. And the bad part about the Curtiss electric propeller, if it didn't have good maintenance, it had a tendency to run away. And that would be catastrophic on this big bird. And there was a number of crashes in America before the CAA, which was before the FAA, banned the use of these propellers and made them convert to hydromatic oil propellers on the C-46. Instead of a four-bladed propeller, it had a three-bladed Curtiss electric propeller on it. They were great airplanes. We used them extensively in Vietnam and Laos. However, we had the old version, where we had the Curtiss electric props, and they were well maintained. I only had one runaway, which was in Dalat in South Vietnam, which was a terrifying experience, and I ended up staying overnight in a village that was not secure. But that's a story that's in the book. The other airplane that was one of my favorites was I got initiated into in Laos. It was a C-123. Initially, I began flying the C-123Bs, which did not have any jet assist or anything else. And it was grossed out at 54,000 pounds. And it was a good airplane as far as getting in short, but your takeoff performance was greatly lacking, even with the R-2800 99Ws that had water injection. But they came up with a solution to this problem of getting out of short strips by hanging J-85 jet engines, one under each wing, with 2,500 pounds of thrust each. This made a rocket ship out of it. It was a fun thing to fly. But they also upped the gross weight to 60,000 pounds. And you could take this airplane in and out of 2,000-foot strips because you had anti-lock brakes and maximum reverse when you touched down. And it was a great airplane. The reverse thrust was perhaps the biggest thing to bring it to a whoa, plus the anti-skid brakes. But I had one instance up in the Plain de Jars going into an old PSP strip that had just been retaken by the Hmong fighters. And I touched down on the end of that thing, brought it into reverse, and when you did that, it shut the jets down. And it did not go into reverse. It stayed in positive thrust. I ended up weaving my way through bomb craters and shell craters in that runway till I finally brought it to a stop using brakes. The customer there said, "Wow, what'd you do that for?" And I said, "Well, the reverse didn't work." And I looked on the back panel in the back of the cockpit, and the circuit breaker for the reverse thrust was popped. And that became another item I always checked in this before landing, is that circuit breaker was fully depressed and not popped. But the good part of that thing was they didn't have to sweep for any unfound mines out there where I traversed the gray area of the runway. These airplanes, to me, were a great joy with the jets. And You could do so many things with that airdropping, taking off short strips, and the rest of that made my day. There are other airplanes in my life that were a joy too. The old Twin Beach C-45 was a great airplane. And then they went ahead and they added jet engines to their turboprop engines to it. And that made it another rocket ship. Added so much power. The old reciprocating engines that had been on it were only 450 horsepower. But when they added the turboprops on it, it jumped up to 1,000 horsepower on each side. And you could do things with that airplane. It was a lot of fun. You cruise at red line in that airplane. It was great fun. But many of the airplanes in my life, I never found one that was truly evil. There were some that I did not like, but you're going to run across that in life, no matter what kind of humanity you deal with, too. Anyways, thank you very much.